Hey there, YouTube, and welcome back to Ask a Maestro. Today's question comes from my friend Michaela's boyfriend, who I guess is now her fiancé. And he asks, how does a composer know when a piece of music is finished? Now, this is one of those great questions where the answer might seem super obvious. It's just when the composer comes to the last bar and they put a double bar line at the end. But like all great questions, this one invites more digging, and the further we go, the more we can find out. The first thing that we have to do is distinguish between the ending of a piece and finishing a piece. Because the ending is really just one component of a completed work. See, a lot of composition is about the act of balancing. Does this section seem too long or too short? Does it interrupt the flow of the music that I had going? And so, depending on the structure that you've created up until the ending might seem too long or too short, and it might need adjustment. But then there's another issue that comes up, which is the issue of human performance. When you, as a composer, are imagining a piece of music in your head, or say listening to it on a computer simulation, or playing it by yourself on the piano, that's a very different experience than hearing it performed live by a group of people. And oftentimes the members of a performing ensemble will interpret what you have written very differently than what you had intended. For example, perhaps you've written a piece that is short and taut and zippy in your mind's ear, but you give it to the performers and it turns out that it's unplayable at the tempo that you want. And when they play it at the slower tempo that they can manage, it ends up sounding really shaggy to your ears. In that case, you would probably go back and readjust it, either make cuts so that it's shorter or change the melodic content so that it can be played by human performers. In this regard, I like to think of a piece of music like a recipe. Now, if you are anything like me, you have devoted a significant amount of your life to watching interviews with Ina Garten. And one of the things that she talks about a lot is the fact that she does not consider a recipe finished until she's tested it in the field.
One of the things I do is I hand my assistant, who's a good home cook, the printed page and say, make it, and I watch her make it. And we always have such a laugh because she does the craziest things that I would never have imagined. I mean, one of them was, was great. She was making, I think it was cooked lentils, and the instructions say to take a turnip and put cloves in the turnip and cook it in the water with the lentils. And I was doing something else and sort of keeping an eye on her. And I look over and she's got this thing that looks like Sputnik. She's got it's like, got a turnip and it's got skewers coming out of this thing. And I'm like, what's she doing? And she's got cloves of garlic on these things. And I said, no, not cloves of garlic, cloves. And so I wrote dried cloves in the ingredient list because somebody else is going to be confused by that. So I'm always looking for information about how people cook, how they shop, how they cook, that really informs the recipe.
Now, not every composer is an Ina Garten. Certain composers hated editing their own works, like for example Sibelius. He is a composer who, when he put that double bar line at the end, he was done with a piece. He did not like to proofread or edit or revise his pieces, the one exception being his violin concerto. Then you have composers like the Frenchman Pierre Boulez, who worked on his third piano sonata for something like 50 years. And he said that until my mind has exhausted every possibility, the piece stays in my head and it's not finished. The poster boy for letting pieces of music linger in unfinished and variable states has got to be Anton Bruckner. Bruckner, of course, made many of the kinds of changes that we've been talking about. After hearing things in performance, seeing how they work, where they lag, where they present awkward challenges for the performers, he would, of course, make changes to his scores. But he's also notorious for taking suggestions from critics and friends who thought that they had a better idea about what his music should sound like. And so most of his symphonies exist in a proliferation of versions. Listen, for example, to the original ending of the first movement of Bruckner's 8th Symphony. compare that with the ending of his revised version from just a few years later. Now that's a pretty startling difference. It's sort of amazing to think that a composer could so radically reconceive the grand design of one of his major works. Now for every Anton Bruckner you have a Johannes Brahms. Brahms left us with no question about his final intentions. He burned all of his drafts and oftentimes completed pieces if he didn't think that they lived up to his standard. We don't have to worry about which version of a symphony or a sonata or a song represents Brahms's true intentions. But this is sort of a loss to posterity because we don't know anything about Brahms' compositional process. Not only how he went about finishing a piece, but how he went about starting a piece. Okay, YouTube, that is it for this episode of Ask a Maestro. Thank you so much to Michaela's fiance for asking this great question. The rest of you, please leave your questions in the comments. Feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, go finish some pieces, sing a song, or play an instrument. And until then, goodbye everyone.